Thank you, gentlemen. We have 10 or 12 minutes for questions, I believe. 10 minutes for questions. I ask that you raise your hand to be recognized. I will recognize you. Tim will bring over a microphone. Do not start speaking until Tim gets the microphone. Please identify yourself as well, please.
Yes. First of all, I have to excuse myself for my poor English, especially because I used to form complicated sentences. So, in case you don't understand, please interrupt me. Number two, my name is Michael Limburg from Germany, EIKI. Thank you for mentioning us, Fred. So this is my identification. And then I would like to add two remarks to the three speeches. Number one is the winter in Germany becomes cooler since the last 30 years. That's what we found out using the official data of the Met Office in Germany. Number two, and that's the most important, my feeling is that the error propagation and the error identification is not well done in research. I know, besides me, just one person who did a lot of work there, this Pat Frank. And when you do this, the unavoidable systematic errors prevent you for getting precise data. That might be the answer why Fred found out that 8 data sets don't fit with each other, and you can find out what you will. Everybody can look what he will. You did a lot of research there. But the only exception for the uncertainty, which is rather big,
Sir,
which is not involved,
you have a question?
comes through too, is the oscillations. You see oscillations in all these curves, and they are always the same. But the 1/10 of a degree measurements are not producible by other data sets because you forget the huge data margin which is accompanied with the data.
Good comment. I think it was a comment, not a question. But then, yeah, in general, is that I think people oversold their products. I mean, there are times in which in science you really have to say you don't know, and then you cannot quantify even these things. I'm sorry. Sometimes error bars is just a misnomer also because it's not an error bar. A lot of this time you simply don't know. There is no, problem is actually the homogeneous sampling of these results. It's just ridiculous. Things are going out of proportion to the point where IPCC is putting this strange stuff about likeliness, 95%. Those are all sociology it will really should put all of these people in hell. If there's a place for this, there will be a very special place I'll create for them. Please go there. It's just nonsense. Cut it out, every little kid will even know that this is wrong.
I ask that we have to be quick. Comments? No. Questions? Yes, please.
Ben Dennison with 21st Century Science and Technology. Hello? Okay. Ben Dennison with 21st Century Science and Technology. For Dr. Soon, a few years ago there was a number of studies saying the sun was going to a longer-term weakening period, potentially. Magnetic field around sunspots getting weaker, certain subsurface processes indicating that not just a regular 11-year minimum, but potentially going into some kind of new Maunder minimum or Dalton minimum level reduction in activity in the coming decades, half century or so. Do you have any opinions on that? Do you think that's something we're heading into?
The detail we should carry it outside, but I'm a lifelong researcher on the physics of the sun. I have to tell you that I'm taking a bit of an agnostic view on it because, again, I need to stay consistent with this problem about information we don't have. You even mentioned the internal part of the sun. There's just really not much data point there. There are some interesting hints, but then a lot of this stuff, I think, put it this way, we're not ready to quote-unquote offer a scientific prediction. That's my claim. But of course, you can always do a lot of statistical extrapolation. They are useful for certain level of discussion. But if you want to call it science, I think it's very hard to justify it from my point of view. Because I think we still need to be cautious. As much as you criticize IPCC for predicting the error of CO2 and then forcing the climate, and you have to be careful about what you can predict about the suns or not. That's my opinion.
Hi, Susan O'Toole with the United States Department of Agriculture, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. I'm probably the only federal worker here who follows these conferences, and thank you very much for these excellent presentations. Dr. Soon, I'd like to ask, all of you are always quoting the IPPC. Have you ever had an opportunity or attempted to bring the IPPC together so you could have a dialogue or debate together in public about what they are claiming and what you are claiming?
If the question is towards me, I think you didn't see my white hair. I really have a lot of white hair. I have tried a lot. You can check back. Second and third assessment IPCC cited my work very prominently. And then all of a sudden, because we're running out of favor in a sense, okay? Oh yes, we tried for years and years and years. But the strategy has becoming so bad now, I would just say we just have to close IPCC. Seriously, just close it. Because they are really anti-science movement. There are too many of these people now growing too large, and year by year, every year it's just conferences here and there. Nothing has been done, not serious about science, never want to talk about anything. I'm willing to help them, please. Tell IPCC to contact Willie Soon. It's very easy to find me. No problem. If they want to see me, come see me. Set appointment.
Michael, thank you for your comment and your question. I want to respond very briefly. What happened during the last decades of the 20th century was a drastic change in the method of observation, both for ocean and for land. On ocean, we introduced floating buoys for the first time, and they gradually took over. And on land, we cut the number of stations drastically and put them in places of airports. This change in the observing population is the basic reason why there has been a reported warming, which does not exist. That is the main conclusion I've come to. I still don't know, and we need to work on what happened to the rise in CO2. It must produce some kind of an effect.
Fred, can I add one more statement about his result? I have to say that if you guys study our paper in 2015, we reconstructed the northern hemisphere temperature using only the rural to try to get rid of so-called non-climatic effect. We clearly see what Fred is claiming, which means 1940s is warm, 30s, 40s warm, and then it cools, and then it warms up again, but then the high at the 21st century is more or less the same. It really shows that the bias of this last one is very clear, that it's a non-climatic type.
Observationally, we have to ask whether the pause in global warming will continue, as it has existed now since 1940. There's been no warming observed, consistent warming, whether it will continue. If it continues, then we have to look for various mechanisms that can offset the effects of CO2. I look for negative feedbacks. I can distinguish 3 kinds of negative feedbacks, but the discussion gets a little complicated, and I will not pursue it now, except in private conversation. If anyone wants to discuss it, please come and see me, and I will be happy to discourse on it.
This will be the last question.
Hi, Adam Wildavsky, representing myself. I have a question for Dr. Easterbrook or anybody who cares to answer. What would your scientific opponents say about your presentation today?
They would probably have apoplexy would be my first response. And my response to all of the assertions of things that are made by the alarmists is let's talk evidence. My whole career is essentially a purveyor of evidence, and the facts speak for themselves. And so I would argue that the factual information that we now have, some of it's clear, some of it's cloudy, some of it is obscure. But there's some things we know almost for sure. And some of those things I presented today my guess is that their response would be that, oh, he's just one of those deniers, and so you can't believe anything he says.
Thank you all for being here today. We have another session in approximately 5 minutes, so if you're going to be in this session, just stay along. If you've got the next door session, please get ready to go over there. Thank you again.